Okay, so Colin, thanks so much. I'm amazed by how much your background is so similar to what I have been working on. You've done multiple cloud migrations. You were responsible for bringing Amazon's retail website onto the cloud, so to speak. And you've lived through so many different organizational dynamics from two pizza box teams to monolithic organizations. So I'm really excited to talk to you about everything. But before we get into that, I'll just love to start off with the human being, Colin, and just maybe just tell us about your childhood, where you grew up, a little bit about your early
Yeah.
days. Yeah.
Okay. Well, once upon a time. Um, yeah, I was born in Liverpool, England, which always blows people's minds because I don't have a thick Scouse, regional accent. Although it's funny when I go back to visit family and friends up in the northwest of England, I tend to find myself sort of sliding back into regional dialects. It's all at the English language, and I think it helps me being in that frame of mind, to understand family members and extended family and friends. And
You
I
know,
think
Liverpool is my favorite city in the UK. I went there because Unilever had its first office up there in Port of Sunlight or something like that. And I remember feeling the warmth of the people there, and they're
oh
just
yeah,
simple, warm, loving people. They love their football. They love their Everton versus Liverpool Red. And I'm a big fan of Liverpool, like as a city, the football club. This is amazing. I'm so happy
oh,
to
I
hear that
mean,
you're from
look,
Liverpool.
it's a wonderful city. I visited a couple of years ago. I was doing some vacation and went out and did rented a taxi and had a fellow take us around to do the Beatles tour. And of course, the city has changed an awful lot in the many decades since I've been there. But you're right. And what I mean, a couple of interesting things about the city. One is, it's effectively a suburb of Dublin. The number of Irish folks that live there is very high. And it's also a city that generally I find to be sort of absent of racism, because it's a port city. And over hundreds of years, there's been people coming in from pretty much every country in the world. It's a very blended, a very integrated society, which, and you don't think about that as a kid growing up, but there are those kind of lessons that stick with you, or frames of thought that I think are really good. So yeah, I was born in Liverpool. We lived there until I was about 7 or 8 years old. Moved to the south of Manchester, right on the Greater Manchester Cheshire border. So fields on one side and big city the other side. And school was, look, I was never a great student. To be clear, if any of my teachers were ever watching this, they'd be like, yeah, we would absolutely agree. Um, and I sort of did enough. My reports were always, does enough to just get by. Much to the consternation of my parents, because I'd spent a lot of time doing other things. Used to make a lot of 8mm film movies. I did a bunch of stage work. I did a bunch of radio work. And that wound up me getting a TV show for a period of time up with Granada TV in the north of England. I hosted a TV show, on broadcast television. Um,
That's
but
amazing how it must be a sign of future leadership that the kid that's kind of, you seem like a very systems oriented childhood. Like you kind of had a little bit of tentacles in different places as opposed to diving deep into one crevice.
yeah, oh, very much so. I mean, look, I'm clinically diagnosed ADD. I got my diagnosis, probably about 20 years ago. My daughter was having some challenges at school, and after she went through her diagnosis, I'm looking at the output. I'm like, huh, me, and the physician's looking at me like, yes, it's hereditary. Where do you think she gets it? Um, so yeah, being ADD, there are some things that I can really deeply laser focus on. But otherwise, it's kind of new experiences and looking at different things, which it worked for me. Not necessarily for everybody, but it worked great for me that I could dabble. So I did a bunch of film and TVs and movies. For when I was about 14, my high school offered I can't remember, it was a programming class or a computer science class, and sounded kind of fun. And I remember the words out of the teacher when I walked in the room on the first day, and he said, "Oh, we're going to learn a new language." And I was struggling with French, and all I could imagine was the same thing. And everybody in the room kind of groaned, and he's like, "Not that kind of language." And we went from there. We had access to the local technical college. They had a DEC PDP-8. And after a year, they upgraded it to a DEC PDP-11. And that was the first ever machines I had access to. Teletypes, punch card, paper tape. Incredibly slow compared with today's world, but just got laser deep and laser focused. My 18th birthday, my parents bought me a Sinclair ZX80 single board, single Z80 processor. And from getting home from school in the evening, I would just work and play on that all night long, just teaching myself. The sun would come up. I'd maybe grab a 30 minutes in bed and then go to school. No wonder my grades suffered as a function of that. And, there was a very interesting point of inflection coming to decide, what I should study at university. Film studies, TV, production, stage, or computer science. And I honestly could have gone, in either way. My father was an engineer. He kind of nudged me a little bit to the computer science stuff. My parents were great. They never told me what to do. They despaired of me making decisions sometimes, but never told me what to do, but nudged me in that direction. I found I accentuate and extended my passion. I love doing my CS degree, and that then, set up the path, move forward. And I think, part of my dad's thought was, you're never going to make any money out of film and TV. The good thing is now, I would consider my career, relatively successful. I can afford to buy the stuff to do the film and the TV radio if I want to. So, I get the best of both worlds. How lucky is that?